Hello and welcome to this tutorial. We are continuing the series of Spark plus PySpark. Today we are going to discuss about partitioning and bucketing. So we will discuss what partitioning is, what bucketing is, and how they both are similar to each other and how they both are different to each other. So whenever we process data on a distributed file system, we usually partition data into multiple parts so that we can process our data on a cluster. So both partitioning and bucketing divides data into multiple partitions for better performance. With using both the approaches, we save us to read or scan complete dataset and we ends up reading the only required partition of data. So this was all about the similarity between partitioning and bucketing. They both divide data into multiple partitions. This is how we save us to read and scan the complete dataset. If in case we need a particular partition, we are only going to read that partition only for the further processing. Partitioning and bucketing both will create multiple parts of data, but partitioning will create folder for each partition while bucketing will create file for each bucket. So this is one thing which is very small. Just keep in mind, partitioning will create folder for each partition while bucketing will create file for each bucket. They have major differences between both of them. By understanding one example, we are going to deep dive into it. To understand the partitioning and bucketing situation, we are considering the employee's data, which has name of employee, age of employee, and location of each employee. So this is how this employee data is going to look like. So we have one simple condition where we want to select data from employee table where location equals to India. So we have this complete data set and this has been partitioned on multiple nodes and this has been partitioned based on location. We want to process data where location equals to IN. Now you might be thinking, what should I do? Should I do partitioning or bucketing? The answer is partitioning. Let me tell you the reason why I am choosing partitioning over bucketing. See, in location column, we have very few distinct values. If I tell you the distinct values, they are only IN, US and UK. So technically we can say the cardinality of this column is low. Cardinality means number of distinct values. So this is how, if the cardinality of a particular column is low, in that scenario we are going to choose partitioning over bucketing. If we go with partitioning with our problem, what will happen? Let's see. Simply data will be partitioned on the basis of each distinct location value, and surely we will end up scanning only one partition for our query because it asks for data where location is India. So this is how partitioning is going to help us reading only a partition instead of reading or scanning the complete employee data. So this was all about partitioning, and let's deep dive into the bucketing. Now, instead of having this condition where I was saying select asterisk from employee where location equals to India, now I have condition as select asterisk from employee where age equals to 28. Now, what should I do, partitioning or bucketing? Answer is bucketing. Let me tell you the reason. If you see this age column, if you look for multiple distinct values or number of distinct values, the number of distinct values are quite high. We have 7 distinct values and the cardinality of this column age is going to be high. So this is what I have mentioned here, because in age column we might have multiple distinct values. Technically we can say cardinality of column age is high. So this is only for a small data that I took just for example, just for understanding the topic. Think of a real-time data it could be much larger than this data. So if there is a column where cardinality of the column is quite high, if I go with partitioning, it is going to create n number of partitions. And if I'm saying it is going to create n or multiple number of partitions, ultimately it is going to create that number of folders. And creating multiple partitions, creating too much partitions and folders will surely overburden the performance of our Spark job. So this is something which is not suggestible. And even if you go with partitions in such scenarios where cardinality of column is quite high, the performance of your Spark job will go back and you are going to end up with too much of metadata. So this is how the partitioning concept is going to be failed, and ultimately it is going to overburden and decrease the performance of your Spark job. Here comes the process of bucketing if the cardinality is quite high. So we got the final mantra: whenever cardinality is high, go with bucketing. If the cardinality is low, go with partitioning. Let's see how bucketing is going to work. Bucketing internally uses hash function like modulo to divide the data into buckets. So it is not going to be based on a concept where we are going to have number of distinct values and each distinct value is going to create a partition or folder. Bucketing is going to use a hash function to divide the data into buckets. In bucketing, we only have to specify the number of buckets, how many number of buckets I want to create, and on which column name I want to create. We need to worry about the internal working of this hash function. So if you look into this diagram, we were having a table and we want to create 3 buckets based on the age column. So this is what I have specified here. And based on this hash function, my buckets, 3 buckets are going to be created. This is what I have drawn into this diagram: hash function creating buckets for different ages using the modulo concept. So this is how bucketing is going to be completely different from the partitioning. But ultimately the goal is going to be same. We are going to only read a particular bucket instead of reading or scanning complete data. This is how both partitioning and bucketing are going to save us to read complete data set and going to improve the performance of Spark job. So it has been clarified that partitioning will be created based on some logic condition, but bucketing will not be created based on some logic function. It is going to be created based on a hash function.